Hello everyone and welcome back to Timeless Affair. I awoke feeling disoriented, a dull throb in my head indicating that something was amiss. Initially my vision was hazy, but after blinking several times to acclimate to the dim light of the room, I became aware that my hands were securely bound behind my back. Attempting to move my legs revealed that they too were restrained. My heart began to race, adrenaline coursing through me as panic started to set in. For a brief moment, the room felt unfamiliar, but then I detected a faint aroma of perfume mingled with the unmistakable scent of alcohol in the air. This particular scent was one I had come to associate with my stepmother, Vanessa. She had always been somewhat of a party enthusiast, never missing an opportunity to open a bottle of wine. However, this situation felt distinctly different. I strained to hear any signs of movement, and the soft rustling of fabric drew my attention. Turning my head toward the sound, I saw her. Vanessa stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame with a glass of wine in hand, the soft glow of the hallway light casting her silhouette. She appeared altered. Her usually tidy appearance was somewhat disheveled, her hair cascading in loose waves around her shoulders, and a smile graced her lips. She took a leisurely sip from her glass, her gaze fixed on me with an intensity I had never encountered before. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she said, her voice low and teasing. There was a slight slur in her speech, yet she managed to convey a playful tone, almost finding amusement in the circumstances. "You're probably wondering what's going on." "Ha!" I swallowed hard, my mouth dry as I tried to find my voice. "Vanessa, what is this? Why am I tied up?" She chuckled a soft, almost musical sound as she took a few steps closer. The way she moved with a slow, deliberate sway in her hips made my pulse quicken. "Oh, don't worry," she purged, setting her glass down on the bedside table. As she crouched down beside me, her hand reached out, fingers lightly brushing against my cheek. "You're safe. I just thought we could have a little fun." "Fun," I repeated, my voice shaky. "What kind of fun involves tying me up?" Her eyes darkened, a mischievous glint in them as her fingers trailed down my neck, sending an involuntary shiver through me. "The kind that you'll enjoy if you just relax," she whispered, her breath warm against my skin. I was torn between confusion, fear, and something else. Something that stirred deep inside me, something I wasn't ready to acknowledge just yet. Vanessa had always been beautiful. That much was undeniable. I'd caught myself staring at her more than once, admiring the way she carried herself, the way she could command attention in any room, but this was new. This was dangerous. She stood up again, circling around the bed, her eyes never leaving mine. "You know, I've been watching you for a while," she said softly, her voice laced with something darker, something more intimate. "I've seen the way you look at me. Don't think I haven't noticed." I opened my mouth to protest, to deny her claim, but the words died on my lips as she leaned over me, her face inches from mine. The scent of her perfume filled my senses, intoxicating and overwhelming. "Don't lie to me," she whispered, her lips barely grazing my ear. "I know you've thought about it about here." I could feel the heat rising in my face. This was wrong, so wrong. But the way she was looking at me, the way her fingers brushed against my skin, made it impossible to think straight. "Vanessa, this isn't right," I managed to say, though my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. She smiled again, that same teasing, dangerous smile as she straightened up and ran a hand through her hair. "Maybe it's not right," she said, her voice thoughtful as she walked around to the other side of the bed. "But does that really matter? You're here. I'm here and no one has to know." I swallowed hard, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of the situation. The rational part of me screamed this was wrong, that I needed to get out of this. But there was another part, a quieter, darker part that was tempted by the way she looked at me, tempted by the forbidden nature of it all. Vanessa leaned against the bed, her fingers lightly tracing patterns on my arm as she continued speaking. "You know," she murmured, "I never thought I'd be in this position. I never thought I'd feel this way about you, but here we are." Her fingers slid down to my wrist, where the rope held me tightly in place. She tugged on it gently, her eyes locking onto mine. "Once again I could untie you," she whispered, "but only if you promise to be good." I stared at her, my breath coming in shallow gasps as I tried to process what was happening. This couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of twisted dream, but the weight of the ropes around my wrists, the heat of Vanessa's body so close to mine, all of it felt too real. "Do you want me to untie you?" she asked, her voice soft but insistent. Her fingers played with the knot, teasing, pulling at it just enough to make it loosen a little, but not enough to free me. "Or do you want to see where this goes?" I didn't know what to say. My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, fear, desire, confusion. I knew what the right answer was. I knew what I should say, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I found myself nodding just barely as a small, tentative yes slipped past my lips. Vanessa's smile widened, satisfaction gleaming in her eyes. As she slowly began to undo the ropes around my wrists, she worked methodically, her fingers brushing against my skin in a way that sent sparks of electricity shooting through me. When the final knot came loose, she stepped back, giving me the freedom I had been so desperate for just moments before. But now that I was free, I didn't move. I just lay there, staring up at her, unsure of what to do next. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to," she said softly, her tone almost gentle now. "But I think we both know what you want." She leaned down, her lips hovering just above mine, her breath warm against my face. "All you have to do is take it." I hesitated, my mind still reeling from the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me, but as she leaned closer, as her lips brushed ever so lightly against mine, something inside me snapped. I reached up, my hands trembling as I pulled her closer, closing the distance between us. The kiss was slow at first, hesitant, as if we were both testing the waters, unsure of where this would lead. But as the seconds ticked by, the hesitation melted away, replaced by something deeper, something more urgent. Vanessa's hands tangled in my hair as she kissed me harder, her body pressing against mine in a way that left no room for doubt about where this was headed. Every rational thought I had left evaporated at that moment, drowned out by the heat of her touch, the intensity of her kiss. There was no going back now. The line had been crossed and we were both too far gone to care. Vanessa pulled back just enough to look at me, her eyes dark and filled with desire. "See," she whispered, her voice breathless. "I told you this would be fun." I didn't respond. I couldn't. All I could do was pull her back to me, my lips crashing against hers once again as the world around us disappeared, leaving nothing but the two of us tangled together in a moment that felt both dangerous and inevitable. The moment was overwhelming, the taste of her lips lingering as our bodies intertwined, a tension simmering just beneath the surface. Every touch, every breath felt like it carried the weight of something forbidden, yet irresistible. Vanessa's fingers danced across my skin, her touch light but electrifying, sending waves of heat through my body. It was like she knew exactly how to pull me deeper into her world, where consequences didn't matter and desire ruled everything. I could feel the shift in her demeanor. What started as teasing had now become something far more intense. Her eyes bore into mine, searching for something, and in them I saw a vulnerability I hadn't expected. For a moment, the confidence that had carried her through the night seemed to falter, replaced by a softness, an unspoken plea. She wanted this as much as I did, but beneath her bravado there was something fragile, something she was risking just by being here in this moment with me. As I looked up at her, all of my reservations started to fade. It wasn't just the thrill of the forbidden anymore, or the intoxicating allure of her presence. It was something deeper. Maybe it was the alcohol in her system. Maybe it was the vulnerability she was showing me now, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was something she needed. Something we both needed, even if we didn't understand why the lines between right and wrong had blurred so completely that all I could see was her. Vanessa's hands found their way to the back of my neck, pulling me closer as she whispered my name, her voice barely audible over the sound of our breathing. There was something raw and desperate in the way she said it, like she was clinging to this moment, as if it were her only lifeline, and maybe it was. We were both lost in this, lost in each other, and the further we went, the less. I cared about the world outside of this room, the softness of her lips, the warmth of her body pressing against mine. It all felt inevitable now, as though every unspoken tension between us had been leading to this moment. It wasn't just passion that drove us, but a connection that neither of us had fully acknowledged until now. With each kiss, each touch, it became harder to remember why this wasn't supposed to happen, why we were supposed to resist. All I knew was that I didn't want it to stop. For a brief moment, she pulled back her chest, rising and falling rapidly as she caught her breath. Her eyes searched mine as if looking for some kind of reassurance, some sign that I wanted this as much as she did. I didn't hesitate without words. I reached out, running my hand along her cheek, pulling her back toward me. The warmth between us reignited instantly, and once again we were caught in the current of our shared need, no longer fighting it but embracing it completely. Time seemed to blur as we moved together, each moment, and extensions of the last, each breath heavy with diarrhea. We had crossed at a line and there was no turning back. Yet in the heat of it all, something unspoken lingered between us, an understanding that this wasn't just a fleeting moment, but something that had been building for longer than either of us had realized. It was more than passion. It was the release of everything we had been holding back, and now we were free. The intensity between us grew a wave of emotion and desire, crashing down with no chance of pulling back. Vanessa's hands explored my body with an urgency that made my heart race faster. Each touch felt like fire, igniting something deep within me, something primal and uncontainable. I responded with equal fervor, my hands tracing the curves of her body, every inch of her skin soft and warm beneath my fingertips. There was no hesitation now, no second guess, only the raw pull of attraction that had been building between us for far too long. Vanessa leaned in, her breath hot against my neck, her lips teasing the sensitive skin as she whispered my name once more, the way she said it full of need and longing. I gripped her tighter, feeling the tension rise between us, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. She moved slowly, deliberately, her body pressing against mine in a way that made every nerve in my body scream for more. It was as though she was savoring each second, drawing out the moment until it felt like the world outside had completely vanished. I could feel her heart beater against my chest, rapid and erratic, matching the pace of my own. Her hands slid down my arms, her fingers gripping me as if afraid I might slip away. But there was no chance of that. We were locked together, lost in the heat of the moment, every kiss, every touch driving us deeper into a whirlwind of sensation. The tension was unbearable, the hunger for each other palpable. The only thing that mattered was the connection between us, the undeniable chemistry that had finally been unleashed. As she pulled me closer, her lips found mine again, this time with more intensity, more passion than before. The kiss was consuming, drowning out everything else, leaving only the sound of our breathing, heavy and ragged. There was a desperation in the way we clung to each other, a mutual understanding that this was a line we had crossed together, and now there was no going back. The world outside didn't matter anymore. Only this moment, only us Vanessas. Hands were everywhere. Her body pressed so tightly against mine that it was hard to tell where she ended and I began. Each touch was electric, sending shockwaves through me, and I couldn't get enough. The air around us felt charged alive with the energy between us, and every second that passed only seemed to intensify the connection. We moved together perfectly in sync, as though this had always been meant to happen, as if fate had drawn us into each other's arms, no matter how wrong it seemed. The climax of the moment hit with a force that left us both breathless, bodies trembling as the intensity peaked, and then slowly ebbed away for a long moment. We just lay there tangled together, the aftermath of everything that had just happened. The room was quiet now, save for the sound of our shallow breaths. Vanessa's fingers brushed softly against my skin, a gentle contrast to the heat that had just consumed us. And in that silence we both understood this was something that would change everything. As the silence settled over us, the reality of what had just happened began to creep in, but neither of us spoke. Vanessa rested, her head against my chest, her breath slowly calming, and I could feel the subtle tremor in her body. There was a weight between us now, something unspoken but heavy, a realization that what we had done couldn't be undone. We had crossed a line, one we could never uncross. But even with that knowledge, the warmth of her against me still felt right, still felt like it was where we were meant to be, no matter the consequences. She lifted her head slightly, her eyes meeting mine in the dim light. There was something vulnerable there, a silent question hanging between us. What happens now? I didn't have an answer, and neither did she. But in that moment it didn't seem to matter. I gently brushed a strand of hair away from her face, my fingers lingering against her cheek. The softness in her expression mirrored my own feelings, a mixture of confusion and contentment. Whatever came next, we would face it together for better or worse. Vanessa's lips curled into a small tender smile, and she leaned in to kiss me one last time, slow and gentle as if sealing an unspoken pact. When she pulled back, she sighed softly, resting her head on my shoulder. The night had changed everything, and though the future was uncertain in that quiet, shared moment, it didn't feel as daunting. We were still wrapped in the aftermath of something powerful, something that neither of us had anticipated but couldn't deny. For now, all that mattered was the closeness, the connection we had found, and whatever came next would come in time.